And so if we think about some of the other predictions that David had put together for 2023, there's one that is there that was also very prevalent in 2022, and that's around this topic of hybrid working. Again, another one I think we're going to be talking about for quite some time. But we're particularly seeing a lot of debate around this one now when it comes to the topic of productivity. And we have this interesting situation where there's a lot of feedback from employees saying they feel they're more productive when working from home. They like this flexibility that they have. But we're also seeing this increasing trend of a lot of business leaders that have the opposite view. And they're now starting to try to bring everyone back to the office, sometimes successfully, sometimes not. And then on top of that, there's a lot of other things that we're seeing kind of bubble up around this. You know, we have a rise of employees placing more of an emphasis on prioritizing maybe their personal lives, maybe their focus on topics like DE&I and sustainability. But then again, we maybe have a contrasting view from leaders who only want to prioritize those types of initiatives if they can demonstrate clear financial impact. And so I'm wondering, are we seeing this bigger disconnect between what workers want and what the business leaders want? And how does HR fit in the middle of this? And so, Diane, would love to come to you first on this one. What do you see HR's role to be in all of this?
Such an interesting question, Ian. Thank you. Look, I think we tend to think about employees as one set of people. And I agree, you know, there's now a new license for self-care. People are more likely to say, I want to build my work around the life I want to lead as opposed to the other way around. I mean, there's, definitely some shift that's happened. But I would say that there are people who are in different chapters of their career, and some people are willing to go for a hustle culture because they're after the money, they want the money so they can do something else with their lives, right? And so they're okay with it. And there are others who are in the work, not necessarily for the money, but for the career, right? And maybe that is they're not as interested in the hustle culture, and they won't go for a company that is now requiring that, which maybe they belonged to that hustle culture before, but they're backing away from it. So I think, different chapters, one thing. I think another thing is people have different drives. I mean, some people work because they love the work, and other people work because they want the money. Other people work because they want the status or prestige associated with the title. And companies have to figure out, what are they attracting? What model are they attracting? So I'll just give you one other change, and that is, and we all learned this way back when we were in undergrads, but people have different needs. Some people have a need for achievement. Other people have a need for affiliation. And Dave will have to remind me of the third one. Power. There you go. And so, so I had heard some very interesting research from a doctoral student, for example, in BU, who's working with a company that realizes, look, we need people to be in the office, so we should be hiring people who have a high need for affiliation. Well, why not, right? At least that way we've got something in common. You like to be around people because that gives you energy, and we need you in the office. And what a great idea. So, so I think there's room for much more homogeneity. We just have to do a better job matching what people want with what the business requires, one. And two, in some cases, the business requirements need to change because they're not necessarily requirements. They're just what people are used to. Okay. So I would say those are the two things that I see going on.
I was going to come to you, Dave, and just say, I know you've been doing a lot of research around the type of data that people are disclosing in their human capital reports, and really kind of what HR is putting out there. Like, where do you feel like HR is ready to help the business in this concept?
Let me answer that, but let me go back to Diane's comment first. I think what we're seeing in the world today, because of that uncertainty, what are we certain about is the navigation of paradox. The paradoxes are going to be inherent: long-term, short-term, top-down, bottom-up, full-time employee, task versus non-employee. I think in the navigation of paradox, we have to have both competition and caring. And how do you navigate the tension between those two? We have to have workers who work full-time and work part-time, who work in an office and not an office. I believe in navigating paradox. You begin to look for common ground. What are we certain about? I'm going to be contrarian. I think hybrid work should not be about where you work and how you work. To me, those are secondary questions. The real questions are, what are you working on and why are you working? And I think it matters less where you're working. Am I in an office? Am I at home? And I'm a coffee shop? Am I on an airplane? Why am I working? And I think the emerging answer, and I'd actually be a little challenging of us in the last 25 minutes, we haven't mentioned the marketplace. We haven't mentioned customers. If a company doesn't succeed in the marketplace, there is no workplace. And again, I believe that so strongly that I think one of the trends in HR, and now it's going to get into the disclosure data, we have a whole list of things we could do. David identified trends and people have added, there's probably 6 lists I've seen of all the trends of the future. DEI, people, personalization, reskilling. For me, the question is, where do I focus scarce resources? Where do I focus scarce resources? How do I decide where in that list of great opportunities should I focus? And the common answer is do a survey, go ask 10 people, or listen to David Green's ideas and then go do what David said. By the way, that's risky. I think by the way, it's risky to listen to me as well, riskier. I think the answer to that question is what will help us succeed in the marketplace? And the marketplace could be a customer, could be an investor, could be a community. That's the issue of disclosures. Right now, companies are being asked to disclose to the investment community, to the customer marketplace, to the social community. What are we doing? What they're doing is disclosing politically appropriate things. How many people had days of training? How many people wore masks? How many people had safety? The question we should be disclosing on is what will create value for all investors, for all customers, for all communities? And for me, that's a holy grail, or the goal at the end of the rainbow. It feels like Sisyphus climbing up a mountain. But for me, one of the issues as I look at an HR person listening to this is there are 10 trends there. We actually came up with 63 in one of our lists. Here's 63 initiatives for the future. Where do I focus? And how do I decide where I focus? And it's not just because some other company did a good job. What will help my company do our job better? And that's the initiative we prioritize and the disclosures we should be doing. So for me, that's one of the really critical, I don't know if it's a right trend, but it's not. We make the music. We decide what music to play and what music we should go after. I think that we're getting better at that. Final caveat on that, and I've gone too long. The answer to that generally is you copy somebody else, you do a best practice that you hear about, you do a survey, you interview 10 people, and they tell you what they think. What we're now finding is we can use AI data and scrape what companies disclose. We just scraped the data from 5,700, actually 7,000 Securities Exchange Commission reports in the United States. We could scrape anything. Using artificial intelligence, we can now tell the company what they are disclosing that they're focused on. And using good statistics, we can show which of those foci initiatives have impact on outcomes they care about. So we're beginning to turn this from an art form with survey bias and a whole lot of biases, observation bias, into a bit more of a science. Now, we're at the very beginning of that journey. And so for me, the question as I listen today is we just heard a lot about skilling, performance management systems, people agency, DEI. Where should I focus? It will help us succeed in the marketplace. And can I create a methodology that allows me as an HR person to sit not only with my executives, but with my investors, my regulators, and know what will create the most value? That's the work we've been trying to do.
In this series, we will be speaking to a range of senior leaders who are pushing a data-driven and digital HR agenda. Make sure that you subscribe via your podcast app of choice and also via our YouTube channel for free and regular interviews with the digital HR leaders of the future.